paralyzed.
I am so paralyzed.
No.
Rough on him now.
No, he needs to know.
Okay.
He's always crying.
Tough love it is, tough love. Wake up,
Japan
idiot.
has experienced a period of economic stagnation, sometimes referred to as the lost decades, since the late 1980s. There are a number of factors that have contributed to this prolonged period of slow economic growth in Japan. Demographic factors. Japan has an aging population and a declining birth rate, which has led to a shrinking and aging workforce. This has reduced the number of people available to work and has also led to an increase in the dependency ratio, with more people in the non-working population compared to those in the working population. This has reduced the potential for economic growth. Structural issues. Japan's economy is heavily reliant on export-oriented manufacturing, and the country has struggled to shift towards a more domestic consumption-driven model. In addition, there are structural problems in the labor market, such as a high level of temporary and part-time employment, and a rigid wage structure that has hindered labor mobility and made it difficult for businesses to adapt to changing market conditions. Debt. Japan has one of the highest levels of public debt in the world, which has led to concerns about the sustainability of its government finances. This has made it difficult for the government to use fiscal policy as a tool to stimulate economic growth. Lack of structural reform. Japan has been slow to implement structural reforms that could address some of the underlying issues facing its economy, such as deregulation, privatization, and labor market reform. This has limited the government's ability to address the root causes of economic stagnation. External factors. Japan's economy has also been affected by external factors such as the appreciation of the yen, which has made its exports less competitive, and the global economic slowdown, which has reduced demand for Japanese exports. Overall, Japan's economic stagnation is the result of a combination of factors, including demographic, structural, and external issues. Addressing these challenges will be key to achieving sustained economic growth in Japan. Japan's economic rise in the 1980s can be traced back to the post-World War II period, when the country underwent a period of rapid economic growth known as the Japanese economic miracle. This period, which lasted from the 1950s to the 1970s, was characterized by high levels of industrialization, technological innovation, and export-led growth. By the 1980s, Japan had become one of the world's leading economic powers, with a GDP per capita that was on par with that of the United States and other Western countries. One of the key factors that contributed to Japan's economic rise in the 1980s was the country's focus on high-quality, high-tech industries. In the post-war period, Japan had focused on rebuilding its infrastructure and developing its manufacturing sector, which included industries such as automobiles, electronics, and shipbuilding. By the 1980s, these industries had become highly advanced and competitive, and Japan had become a leading exporter of high-tech goods to the rest of the world. Another factor that contributed to Japan's economic rise in the 1980s was the country's strong focus on education and research and development, R&D. The Japanese government invested heavily in education and R&D, which helped to cultivate a highly skilled and technologically advanced workforce. This, in turn, enabled the country to continue to innovate and develop new products and technologies that were in high demand globally. Japan's economic rise in the 1980s was also facilitated by the country's strong economic policies. Japan had a relatively stable political environment, and the government implemented a series of economic policies that supported the growth and development of the country's industries. These policies included subsidies and tax incentives for businesses, as well as regulatory reforms that aimed to increase efficiency and competitiveness. One of the challenges that Japan faced during its economic rise in the 1980s was the country's high levels of debt. Japan's government and businesses had borrowed heavily in order to fund infrastructure projects and industrial expansion, and by the 1980s, the country's debt levels had become a major concern. In response, the Japanese government implemented a series of austerity measures that aimed to reduce debt and increase fiscal stability. Overall, Japan's economic rise in the 1980s was the result of a combination of factors, including the country's focus on high-tech industries, strong education and R&D systems, and supportive economic policies. While the country faced challenges such as high levels of debt, it was able to overcome these challenges and maintain its position as one of the world's leading economic powers. Japan is a major economic power, ranking third in the world in terms of GDP. It is a developed country with a strong and diversified economy, with a focus on advanced manufacturing, technology, and services. Despite its economic strength, Japan has faced a number of challenges in recent years. One major challenge has been demographic change, as the country has an aging population and declining birth rates. This has led to a shrinking labor force, which has put pressure on the economy. Another challenge has been the strong yen, which has made Japanese exports less competitive on the global market. This has hurt the country's manufacturing sector, which is a major contributor to GDP. To address these challenges, the Japanese government has implemented a number of economic reforms. One key reform has been the Abenomics policy, which aims to stimulate growth through a combination of monetary easing, fiscal expansion, and structural reform. This has included measures such as increasing government spending, cutting taxes, and boosting exports. Despite these efforts, Japan's economy has struggled to achieve strong and sustainable growth. One major factor has been the country's reliance on exports, which have been hit by slowing global demand. In addition, Japan's domestic market has been relatively stagnant, with low levels of consumption and investment. To boost growth, Japan has also focused on innovation and technology, with a focus on areas such as robotics and artificial intelligence. The government has also promoted international trade and investment, including through free trade agreements with other countries. Overall, Japan's economy continues to face challenges, but it remains a major global player with a strong and diversified economy. The country's strong manufacturing base and focus on innovation and technology will likely continue to be key drivers of growth in the future. Japan's economy has been facing several challenges in recent years, including a shrinking population, low productivity growth, and declining international competitiveness. Despite these challenges, there are several factors that suggest Japan's economy will continue to grow in the future. One of the key drivers of Japan's economic growth is its strong export sector. Japan is a leading exporter of advanced technology products, such as electronics, machinery, and automobiles, which are in high demand globally. Additionally, Japan has signed numerous free trade agreements with other countries, which have helped to boost its exports and increase its global market share. Another factor that will likely contribute to Japan's economic growth is the government's efforts to stimulate the economy through fiscal and monetary policies. In recent years, the government has implemented various measures to stimulate growth, including tax cuts, public works projects, and monetary easing. These measures have helped to boost consumer spending and investment, and have contributed to the country's economic recovery. In addition to these factors, Japan's economy will also benefit from the increasing demand for Japanese products and services in the Asia-Pacific region. The region is home to many rapidly growing economies, and as these economies continue to develop, they will likely increase their demand for Japanese products and services. This will create new opportunities for Japanese companies and will help to drive economic growth.